So I think with that, I've done everything I was asked to do, and other than the following, which is to introduce our first guest speaker, and that's Kelly Erwin, who is the director of the Massachusetts Farm to School project. Thank you. Here's a little bit about her that I didn't know. Formerly, she was a health educator, a sales manager, a human services agency director, and an agricultural marketing specialist. She launched the Massachusetts Farm to School project in 2004 to encourage schools, pre-K through college, to purchase food from local farms. She has been a local foods and farming advocate for the past 20 years, a winner of awards from the Glenwood Center, Project Bread, and the Massachusetts Public Health Association. Kelly, I won't call her Missy Erwin, she's a friend, is on the leadership committee of Farm to Institution in New England, called FINE, and is a founding member of the National Farm to School Network. She serves on the National Farm to Preschool Committee and has presented farm to institution procurement workshops throughout the United States. Kelly holds a bachelor's in arts in education and human services right here from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. Please join me in welcoming Kelly.
Hi. So my goal for today is to not talk fast. I only have 15 minutes to talk to you about this topic, and it's really a 4 to 6 hour workshop. So I decided to just tell myself that you can all ask questions later or come and see us, and it would be better if I didn't talk fast and you actually could remember some of the things I said. So we'll give it a try, and you can let me know at the end how that worked. Could we have the first slide? So just a few brief words about the Mass Farm to School project. You can see there it says profitable for farmers, affordable for schools, good for communities. And that kind of encompasses not only our reason for existence, but also a little bit of our evolution as an organization, which is a little bit like the evolution of PVGrows. And so I thought it might be worth talking about for a minute. When we first started, it was actually an initiative at the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources under then Commissioner Jay Healy. And the idea was pretty vague, pretty abstract. It was just, oh, there's a lot of big institutions in Massachusetts. Maybe that would be a good new market for farmers. And so I began to work on that while I was at the department. And after I was laid off, they no longer had anyone to work on it. I decided to just keep going and see where it went. But I want to share a story with you that probably some of you have heard, but many of you have not. So I'm working for the Department of Ag, and one of the great perks is that you get to go to food shows. You go to the gourmet food show, you go to the seafood show. You have these great shows where you have a table and you don't eat breakfast because you know there's going to be like 9 aisles of really good food. So we decided, since we were looking at these new markets, that for the first time we would go to the trade show for the School Food Association. So it's basically 9 aisles of food for schools. And I didn't bring my lunch, and I went, and oh my God, I went up and down the 9 aisles going, no, 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 oh, I don't wish I brought myself a peanut butter sandwich. So it was really horrifying, and it was also so mind expanding, because I spent the day talking to school food service directors and discovered this is a really hardworking group of people. These are folks who are under the gun from a time management point of view, a space management point of view, and a financial management point of view. And they're reviled. You know, people write picture books where the bad guys are the lunch ladies. Although there's now a new one that's the lunch ladies a superhero, so we are changing. And I found out things like that the Ed Reform Act had meant that a lot of schools had gone to having only 15 minutes for lunch. Can you imagine a first grader needing to get through the line, sit down, get their food kind of started, and lunch is over? So my heart really went out to them, and I also thought, well, here's an amazing combination. We have farmers who are under really tight constraints financially, who are often undervalued in their community, who are kind of hidden. And you have these food service directors in a similar situation. Couldn't we bring them together and working together make things better for both of them? So that was a lot of the impetus as we moved from just thinking about farmers to really wanting to be part of the school food community. So that duality of thinking, it's about the farmer, it's about the customer, is what really makes farm to institution work. You cannot do a good job trying to help folks move into a new direction together unless you really feel attached to the issues of both sides. And we started out kind of calling ourselves the Match.com of farm to institution, that our idea was that we would do a lot of the pre-qualification, the screening for folks who are busy, and then try to bring them together. And we continue to do that to today. Okay, so just a little bit more. I'm going to throw this out to the audience. If you were thinking about, okay, we want farm products to get into more institutions in the state, what institutions would come to your mind as like, should be really good customers? Have a lot of money, or really interested in food, serve a lot of meals. Where would you go first? Hospitals, anything else? Colleges, right. So that's what we thought. We thought K through 12 is going to be tough. We want to work with them, but we need to use the colleges, the hospitals, the corporate dining as a way to build the market and make it easier for farmers to maybe also build in some deliveries to schools. Well, we discovered that that was only going to work in a few places. And I want to shout out here to Smith College, to UMass Amherst, to Bay State, to Cooley Dickinson. There are definitely those kinds of institutions in our state that are making a difference and are really part of the local foods movement. But we found out that most of those institutions are managed by corporate food service management companies. And that was a whole different kettle of fish. So it completely changed our view on who was going to support the movement. Okay, can we have the next slide? Okay, this is from 2010. And there are two things that I think are really important to see on this. One is, wow, that's a lot of money. This is just the money that is spent on K through 12 public school food in the different states of the Northeast. And you can see that Massachusetts and New York look like they have most of the eaters. And that has really informed our work as we've moved forward. That, in fact, we're a very small state and we have really a lot of the people in New England. So when we're looking at feeding large groups of people, we may have to go outside of the region. So this is like a big deal that I want to share with you all, like compared to anybody else in the world. I started out as a person who was helping to found CISA. And while I was really involved in that project, it was Pioneer Valley or nothing. Like, I don't want to hear about Fitchburg. I don't want to hear about South Dartmouth. It's just about the Pioneer Valley, and we're going to make it work here. And I was like that for a long time. Then I went to work for the Department of Ag, and I had to kind of reset my calibrations a little and say, okay, it's all about Massachusetts. That's all it's about, is Massachusetts. We're not interested in Vermont, Connecticut, or Rhode Island. I don't want to hear about it, and I'm not helping them. And, you know, very protectionist, I think, is how I would look at it. And then, as I got more and more involved in farm to institution, I realized for the amount of food that we needed to move around and to feed these large institutions, it was really not appropriate to just think of ourselves as Massachusetts, you know, or bust. And that if we were in a different part of the country, all of New England would be one state. So that brought us to regional involvement, and I have gotten more and more involved with Farm to Institution New England, and we are working very hard looking at distribution and volume and processing and trying to figure out ways in which we might be able to use some of that food in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine in particular to bring it down to Massachusetts. So that doesn't negate the idea that you should have the food come from as close to home as possible. And we try to teach the institutions the idea of radiating circles. You know, you start as close to home as you can, and then you move out depending on what your needs are. Okay. I think we better go to Sam's beautiful diagram. Now, you all have to check out this diagram. It's a work of art. And I helped a little, but Sam mostly did this. And I'm going to look at my copy. All right, so again, this is like a 4-hour workshop, and it's probably TMI, that 4 hours for most of you. So we're going to just try to give you farm to institution light, so that when you go to parties, you will sound very knowledgeable, but you won't bore people like I do. Okay, so it took us a long time to learn all of this, and it's been changed a couple times. But basically, one of the other things I learned about Massachusetts farming that really informs our work and really makes our work a challenge, even though it's a good thing, is that in the last 30 years, if this was a balanced scale, 30 years ago, this was wholesaling farmers in Massachusetts, and this was direct retail. And now, it's like this. So, and that's a good thing, because that's kept our farms alive. That direct sale through the farm stand, the CSA, the farmer's market, awesome idea. Fantastic way to keep farm vitality alive. But if you're looking at selling food to the Springfield Public Schools, if you have 1.5 acres and you're mostly selling your farm stand, that's probably not going to be a customer for you. It's not of interest to you, and you're not set up that way. So we're working with a fairly small pool of the overall group of farmers who might even be interested in wholesaling. So accepting that, you can see if you are the farm, you have some choices on how to sell to an institution. And you have this chart in the back of your yellow handout there, your packet. And there's also a list of the schools and colleges in Western Mass that told us last year they preferentially purchase locally grown. So the farmer can sell direct to the dining services, which we'll hear about later when Joe Sykowski talks about selling to UMass. Or in the case of Smith College, I know they work a lot with Brad Morse at Outlook Farm. Depending on the size of the institution, some of our smaller public schools actually go to farmers markets or farm stands and buy direct right there to bring home for their small operations. And some of our institutions are working on the idea of becoming part of a CSA, either by buying a certain number of shares or in some cases actually depositing money in an account with the CSA and then drawing down as they take only specific kinds of vegetables or fruits. In all of those cases, the hope is that the farm will see the largest profit from having sold direct to the customer, and that the customer will get a reasonable price because they're not paying for an extra entity. This is a hope which we are sometimes able to realize, but it's also a hope that we're often not able to realize. If you want to hear about the ups and downs on that, talk to the folks from Farm to Preschool and Families in Springfield who are still working out, trying to figure out exactly what way to get that food delivered works for them. Okay, so now let's go the other way. If you look down the chart, we have what it says aggregator or distributor. So even in the case of a farm like Sykowski Farm, which is selling direct to UMass, unless he had a magic field, Joe Sykowski probably cannot grow the $600,000 worth of fruits and vegetables that UMass is buying all by himself. So none of the institutions are very excited about having multiple vendors come to their loading dock. They don't want a farm for each product to show up. And for the farmers, it's often not that profitable if they only have one product to deliver, with the possible exception of apples. So now you're looking at, do I actually give my product as a farmer to a co-op, to another farm that's aggregating, to a processor like John Waite in the processing center up in Greenfield? Is there a nonprofit food hub like Farm Fresh Rhode Island that's aggregating and then distributing? Or am I going to sell my product to what we call a conventional distribution company? Does anybody here know some conventional distribution companies you could mention? Produce companies? Squash Trucking? Yep. Fresh Point, yep, that's a big one. Any others? Rock's Produce. Okay, so those are companies that have been set up to sell fruits and vegetables and to warehouse it, and that's what they do. So the one thing I want you to know when you leave, we're going to have a quiz, is what is the difference between a distributor and a food service management company? Because this is something people get confused and it's actually totally different. A distributor is simply buying in food and then selling that food out to customers. and delivering it. Sometimes doing a little processing along the way. A food service management company is a company that you subcontract with to run your food services. So if you were, for instance, to go to Hampshire College has just hired Bon Appetit to be their food service provider. So they give the whole thing over and say, you do it for us, thank you very much. And in our state, about 90% of the colleges and hospitals have made that decision to just subcontract. In our K through 12 level, it's more like 15 to 20%. So the management company doesn't actually buy food from farmers, drive it around in trucks and distribute it. They are buying the food for the customer from a distributor and having it delivered to the institution. So their money is being made off of a combination of what they charge the institution to manage their operation and off of what are called volume discounts, which is a polite word for kickbacks. So let's take the example of Fresh Point. If Fresh Point makes a contract with a big company like Sodexo or Aramark or Chartwell's, you know, that's a huge customer. It's a very important customer. And Sodexo or Aramark or Chartwell's will expect some consideration for the fact that they're so important. So the consideration that they usually get is a volume discount. So the more I, as an Aramark vendor, order for my customer, say it's UMass Lowell, the more of a discount or rebate I get back from that particular vendor. And that system is what makes it very difficult to break in to selling local to management companies. Now this has really exploded in the last few years, and the management companies are really working hard at finding ways to take their system and rework it a little bit in order to be able to buy local because they feel the pressure. But the requirements that the management companies have and the financial structure they have makes it very difficult for us to break in. Okay, so I am done, except that I would like to just honor a few folks here. Ann Cody, do you want to stand up? Ann was a specialist at Farm to School for quite a while, and she now runs the kindergarten initiative in Holyoke. So that's been great. And Sarah and Jessica, you want to just stand up for a minute? This is the Farm to Preschool and Families folks from Springfield, and we're very proud of them. And I also would like to mention my staff. Erica, Erica is from Amherst. She is the communications and outreach coordinator for us, and that means she does our newsletter. She's running the Harvest of the Month campaign. She knows all about the Farm to School network, so talk to her. And Lisa, are you here? Lisa is our brand new Western Mass farm to cafeteria specialist. So if you are thinking about working with your institution, whether it's a college, a casino, a jail, whatever, Lisa is the one that will be your Match.com facilitator. So please grab her. Thank you.